Firefly Bracelet. This bracelet was designed in collaboration with Anna during one of our live Twitch sessions. Gather up your materials listed at the start, or check out the links below me near that subscribe and like button are details when you hit that show more button. We're going to be using 2 needles. I have 2 size 12 beading needles on some .006 Wildfire beading thread, and I'm using a green color to kind of match my beads. I have my cup button here, which is in that crystal or that jet edge slipper, and I'm going to put on 3 of my 15-0s onto a needle. Doesn't matter right or left. The 15-0 color that I'm using is the Miyuki brand, and it's Duracoat Galvanized Muscat. I'm going to go through the button so that it is facing down, and that way my needles are coming out the back flat side. Those seed beads then are going to sit right in that dome of that little cup button. If you want to, you can also add the 11-0s, that's up to you. And coming out of the back of the cup button, I'm going to be using 2 15s on both the right and the left needle. We will have an opportunity as we come down and kind of finish off catching on the second hole of our daggers to reinforce this clasp. So don't worry that there's only 1 strand going through it right now, because you know you don't want to leave 1 strand. We will be going through and adding a second strand. As you add the beads, you want to make sure that you have equal amounts of thread on both sides of the beads. Coming out the back then, we are going to add our first basically of our kind of cross stitch that we're going to do. So what we're going to be doing repetitively is getting your 11-0 seed beads here, and 4 is going to be our count for our 11-0. The 11-0, I'm also using the Miyuki brand, and I'm using Silver Lined Dark Topaz AB. It's a great color. Great one to have if you want to match a lot of different things. Put 4 of those on the right or the left needle, and take the opposite needle in your hand and go through the opposite way through the beads. So in my case, the first needle went from the right-hand side out the left-hand side of the beads. The second one goes from the left to the right. Again, make sure once you pull your thread that you still have equal amounts on either side, because remember we want about 5 feet of thread, so you want to have about 2.5 on each side still. Those 4 seed beads are going to be the constant pattern when you pick up the 11-0 seed beads, crisscrossing through all 4 of those beads. As we come out of our 4 seed beads on both the right and the left, we're going to build our first little box. The boxes are going to consist on the right-hand side of 2 of our 15s, 1 11, get some more in this frame here, and 2 more 15s. That's on both the right and the left needle. So you're going to let that drop down next to your already existing clasp, and you want to make sure again that you have the same amount of thread in both the right and the left side of the needle, making sure also that your tail is even as well. So again, our number count for our 11-0 seed beads is going to be 4. So we're going to put 4 11-0s now on the right needle, and we're going to continue that crisscrossing effect. The left needle is going to go through those same 4 beads so that it comes out on the right-hand side. That is going to cross those beads right along the top, and like I said, form our first little box. Now we get to put on our EVAs and our daggers. When we're putting on our EVA beads, they are going to sit with the points facing toward one another. Our 2-hole daggers are going to sit inside of those EVA beads. When we put them on, we want to make sure that we go through the first hole of our daggers. So I'm going to put on now my EVA bead going towards the center open portion, starting at the V portion, adding in my 2-hole daggers through the first hole, and then I'm going to go through the other hole of the EVA, coming out again towards that pointed side. Let that fall down right next to those 4 seed beads that are basically going to act as a spacer so the EVAs do not hit one another. Picking up the left needle, repeat, going through the EVA so that it's coming out towards the center, grabbing in your 2-hole daggers, and then again going through the second hole of the EVA, so you're coming out towards that point. Give a nice kind of push down along the piece to make sure that you don't have any extra thread showing. This is our first portion of our little dragonfly wings. Now we're going to repeat over and over that same box and then wing portion. So on my right hand needle here, I just picked up 4 of my seed beads. The left hand needle, I'm gonna grab and go back through those 4 beads that I just put on. Get my tail out of the way here. Then go through, crisscrossing through. So we're always crisscrossing through the 4 seed beads. Pull that down next to the piece. And you can see the wings are kind of gonna fly around a little bit. And they will get stationed a little bit more as we come back and use the second hole. If you only have 1-hole daggers, your wings will flop around. So you definitely want to have the 2-hole daggers for this. After that, you're going to go both with the right and the left side of your needles, grabbing on 2 15s, an 11, and then 2 15s, pushing that down next to your project. Again, because it is a 2-needle project, whatever happens generally on the right is going to happen on the left as well. So I get my beads on here. My 11-Os just want to stay off frame. I'll pull those on them. Get my beads on. And then we'll dump a couple more 11s out here so you can see. We're going to crisscross through once again. So that 4 count of our 11-Os are always going to get crisscrossed through. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right needle goes on. Left needle crosses through. Pull those down next to the piece, and you're set up with your next little cube there, and you're ready to go with your next set of daggers. If you really don't like 2 needles and you know right angle weave, you can look at this pattern and figure out how to do it with 1 needle currently. Once you're done the span of your wings, and in my case I had 10 and I used 20 of my Eva beads, you're going to go through and coming out of your last little box section, we are going to make our loop for our button to sit inside. So coming out of there, I want you to add in on both the right and the left needle, I want you to add in 2 of your 15-Os, then 1 of your 11-Os. So on the left needle, 2 15-Os as well. And after those 2 muscat, you're going to go through that 1 11 going opposite directions, just like we've been doing with our 11s when they're in the group of 4. That's going to form a little triangle right above my last squared section. It's right there. That's going to allow me to go in them and create my loop for my clasp. I'm going to pick up my right hand needle, since I'm faster with that, and I'm going to do a loop for the button and the clasp. I'm going to do this as basically in every other pattern. So I'll kind of pull my beads here, and I'm going to do a 15, 11, 2 15s, 11. 2 15s, 11, and so forth. When I get down to the end, I'll end with 1 of my 15-O seed beads. So you can see how the pattern kind of looks there. I want to make sure that this is large enough that my clasp can fit through, but I don't want it too big that the loop is really going to remain opened up, because it is a little bit heavier of a bracelet with all of these wings on. Once you have the correct amount, which I use this time usually when I do my clasp to kind of tidy up and clean up my bead mat, gather up all the 15s that may have gone flying as you were working with them, bring them in, and add them onto your needle. Finishing up then, I'll see whether or not I am good enough for my loop. I probably have just a couple more that I need to add. So do a little bit more cleaning up on the bead mat. Look for 2 more 15s that may have flown around. And finish up my loop. Once you have that loop, you're going to take the needle that's in the right hand side, go back through that 11-0 that sits kind of crisscrossing and connecting the 2 strands. The needle that's on the opposite side now, we're going to use this to reinforce this loop that we just did. So this needle now is going to go back through all of these seed beads that created the rope, and make sure that you're going back through all of the seed beads. If you happen to miss one, that one will literally stick out like a sore thumb because it will stick out of the project. If you want to, you can also do a peyote stitch, adding in some additional 15s and sharing the 11s. So you could add 2 15s and then go through just the 11-0 seed beads with this second stitch. And that would also look nice and make the clasp a little bit more fancy. Once you get finished, go back through that same 11-0 seed bead. And then with both the right and the left, you want to pull the thread down so that it disappears inside the loop. From here, we're going to go through. We are going to add in kind of the center, and then also we will get ready after that to add the second strand of the daggers and add some seed beads in between each. So it's time to add in some of our round duos, and you want your 15 O's for this because we're going to be adding 15 O's along the sides here. So I have a nice pile of my 15s. And on the right hand side here, where I have the needle coming out, I'm going to go through the 2 15s that sit right after that 11 that my thread is crossing through. I'll do the same thing with the left needle as well. From here, I'm also going to crisscross through those 11 O's to get to my starting spot. Each time you're coming out of the 11 O's, we're going to add our round duo into the center of the design. To add the round duos in, you're going to pick up a 15 coming out of that side, go through one hole of the round duo, add another 15, and then go up to the same side to that next grouping of 4 beads. That's going to kind of pull the round duo, and we're going to force it to just sit in the middle a little bit. With the needle that's on the left-hand side, then we're going to do the exact same thing through the other hole of the round duo bead. So our needle and thread is going to come out through those 2 15s, cross through those 11s, and come out through the 11s, add in a 15, go through the round duo, add a 15, and then cross through the 4 11s on the opposite side and out. When you give a nice tight pull then, it pulls that round duo right so it sits right in the middle. And you really shouldn't see much of any extra thread at all. Once you do the round duos, you're going to continue with some 15s and 11s that are going through and going on top of the EVA beads. So I did 2 so you could see them and kind of what effect that has on the EVAs and really accentuating that actual V portion. So once you put on your round duos, and again you do the 15 and then the round duo 15, go into the same side and go into those 4 11s, pick up the needle coming out the other way, again go in and do your 15, catch onto the second hole of the round duos, and you want to make sure when you do this that you do pull tightly because you don't want to see thread, and when you pull tightly it will make that thread disappear basically. Add another 15 and then crisscross through those 4 11s. Now I already showed how to do that. So basically I'm in position now to crisscross on top of, to create the crisscross, but we're not actually crisscrossing on top of our EVA beads. So again, our wings kind of have to hang out there and they will cooperate once we get to the next section. So here, whatever needle you have in your hand, I want you to pick up 3 15s, 1 11, and 3 15s. You're gonna take this right over top of the EVAs and crisscross through the next 4 11-0s. So I'm coming out basically the bottom right, I'm going into that top left and through. That's going to have those beads sit right along the top of the next section of Eva's. With the opposite needle, I want you to grab 2 15s. You're going to share that 11. We're not crisscrossing through it, we're sharing it. So, 3 15s. Crisscross, share that 11-0 seed bead. And we're going to go through that 11-0 in the same direction. So we've been doing a lot of crisscrossing, we're just going through the same direction. Once you're out that 11-0, add 3 more 15s. And then jump down to that same set of 11s and crisscross through it. You'll then have your needle exiting along the opposite side, and you want to give a nice tight pull, and that's going to pull that X right on top perfectly on top of those Eva beads. Continue on adding in your round duos as well as Xing on top of the Eva beads. So coming out the end here, after doing all of my round duos and my little X's, I'm going to go up through my seed beads as well as my cup button with this needle on the right hand side. I'm going to come down the left hand side then, and that reinforces my clasp. I need to get back to my starting point then again with my needles coming out of my opposite ends of my 4 seed beads that I've been crisscrossing through. From there, we're going to go down through the sides of our boxes that we created. And we're going to come out through those 11-0s that sit on the side of our boxes. So you're crisscrossing through, making sure your needles are coming out opposite sides of those 4 beads that we share. Then you're bringing your needle and thread out, and you want them to come out right after the 11-0s on either side of your project. Now what we have to do is lock in the second hole of our daggers. And in addition to that, it also kind of holds them in place so they're not flopping around and flying around. And what we're going to do, I did 2 on the right-hand side so I could show you, and then I'll do 2 on the left, and then I'll switch back and forth right to left. You're going to pick up 2 15s coming out of that 11 like I had said. 1 11, 1 15. You're then going into the second hole of that 2-hole dagger, adding 1 15 between the dagger, going through the second hole of the second dagger, and then repeat 1 15, 2 11s, 2 15s. Or I'm sorry, 1 15, 1 11, 2 15s. Once you have that on your needle and thread, you're going to hook up to the 11-0 seed bead that sits right on the side of the round duo. Sewing through that. Then we're going to repeat. So it's now just the same thing over and over to get those flying wings. 2 15s, 1 11, 1 15 through the dagger, out the middle, 1 15 to separate the daggers just the smallest bit. If you separate them out too much, which you can do if you want, if you separate them out with like an 8-0 seed bead, they'll kind of fly over top of one another. It's a different look. It's not going to really affect it one way or the other, so you can do that if you want. Then again, downgrading 1 15, 1 11, 2 15s into that next 11-0 seed bead right on the side of that round duo. And the hardest thing when you're doing this is to make sure that it doesn't get caught in any of your wings as you're building your project. So I'm going to continue then going through adding in the 11s and 15s along the side of my wings here and kind of capturing them in place to fly along the bracelet. Once you finish the seed bead section of the Firefly bracelet, all you need to do is tie everything off. So I'm coming out of my last dagger there, and I've already done the other side, adding in my 11 and 15s. And I have my last set on. I'm going to go up through that 11-0 to finish it off just like we did at the start. And what I'm going to do now is I have the other thread right at the 11-0 as well. I'm going to take my thread and needle through the 2 15s after. I can reinforce the clasp one more time if I want. I'm going to go through those shared 4 beads at the end of the box. And then I'm going to come down through the 2 15s here. If you want to, and you can do it inconspicuously, depending on the thread color you're using, you're going to tie those two thread ends together. Left over right, right over left. And then I'm going to separate out the threads since I have enough room on my needle to separate out these threads. So one of them I'm going to leave there. The other thread I'm going to bring back down through the project a little bit towards the interior and underneath. I'll come out somewhere along the back then and burn off that extra thread. The other thread and needle that are on the front, I'll take to a different spot and burn those off as well. So now that I have it knotted in the front, I brought it to the back, burn that thread end down, and then burn that flush against the project. And there you go. Once you burn off the other one, your Firefly bracelet is done, and it can flitter on your wrist. A lot of people want to see the bracelets on. I have a tiny wrist, so the bracelet itself is a big one for me as far as length and size. But I mean, it is definitely a showstopper sort of a bracelet. Even showing kind of in the bigger screen here, the bracelet on and kind of how it sits on my cuff. So I could have gotten away with one less grouping of daggers and done 18 rather than, or 9 groups rather than 10 groups of the Eva beads. As always, thanks so much for watching the Firefly bracelet. Remember, if you haven't checked us out on Twitch or on Facebook Live, remember to do so you can see us work through some of these different projects. As with all the projects, if you need any of the materials, we're happy to send them to you from PotomacBeads.com. You can get links to PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu below the video near that subscribe and the bell that have the descriptions of the actual products and the colors that are used in the video, as well as links for them also. Thanks so much for watching, and enjoy your own Firefly bracelet.